Hi there, it's me, Karen, again. As you might remember from our earlier course on UX research, everyone is influenced by their personal biases. When bias creeps into UX research, you might move forward with a product that doesn't address the user's real pain points. UX designers can also be affected by implicit bias, so we need to be aware of how our own points of view can alter our designs, influence users, and affect society. In this video, you'll learn how to recognize bias and how to consciously avoid its impact on your designs. One of the most common biases affecting designers is implicit bias. As a refresher, implicit biases are the collection of attitudes and stereotypes we associate with people without our conscious knowledge. Whether positive or negative, these biases can unconsciously be mistaken for truth when in reality they aren't. Implicit bias can have detrimental effects on those who are the subject of the bias. For example, let's say that a restaurant manager is looking to hire a new employee. The manager has two applicants. One is a 22-year-old with no restaurant experience. The other is a 53-year-old with over 30 years of experience working in the food and beverage industry. If the restaurant manager has an implicit bias that people above the age of 50 are easily overwhelmed or move slower than younger people, they might overlook the older applicant without reviewing the applicant's experience. This is an implicit bias against the older applicant. Age alone doesn't speak to someone's behaviors, actions, or abilities. Biases like this can result in qualified people not being hired or even being terminated unfairly. Implicit biases often find their way into the UX design development process. For example, imagine you're designing a map application for New York City. Because your implicit bias is that people walk as a primary form of transportation, the directions in your app assume the user is walking. This means your app will give map routes following sidewalks and passing through green spaces. But your implicit bias is flawed. While many New Yorkers walk to work, millions of New Yorkers use the subway, take the bus, ride in cabs, drive and bike. You wouldn't want your app to direct someone in a car through a green space because you assume they'd be walking. More importantly, many people are unable to walk, so your implicit bias that all New Yorkers walk ignores ability as a constraining factor. Someone relying on public transportation would need directions to the nearest subway or bus stop, and someone in a wheelchair might not be able to access a subway station. For example, only 1 in 4 subway stations in Manhattan, a borough of New York City, are wheelchair accessible. In this case, our bias about New Yorkers prevents us from creating a product that truly serves all our users. Implicit bias is just one reason why creating and following personas in user journey maps is so important. To refresh your memory, a persona is a fictional user whose goals and characteristics represents the needs of a larger group of users. And the user journey is their path to the product, meaning what the user's needs are and how the product can solve those needs. When creating personas, UX designers need to be as inclusive as possible. We shouldn't assume that a certain ethnicity, gender, age, ability, or socioeconomic group is or isn't part of our audience. Users can be complex human beings with many unique qualities and distinct needs. User research helps us avoid assumptions about who our users are. Instead, research helps us better understand users and give them what they need. For example, imagine you're designing an app to help parents find childcare. To personalize your onboarding process, you start by showing the message, "Welcome, moms. We're here to help you find the right babysitter for your little one." You might have thought that by addressing users directly as moms, you were humanizing the experience. But there's something wrong with this message. It immediately excludes every other type of caregiver, like grandparents, guardians, dads, and others. Implicit bias like this leaves out important users, which is bad for business. Addressing users this way also reinforces the stereotype that moms are in charge of figuring out childcare, and it presumes that every child has a mother. Being aware of your implicit biases and combating stereotypes is important work. By creating inclusive user experiences, designers help build a more equitable society. Okay, now you know how implicit bias can affect your role as a UX designer. There are more biases we'll cover in the course readings. Coming up, we'll discuss another ethical issue in UX design called deceptive patterns. See you there!